Okay, it's going to be a review of ECW One Night Stand 2006. Without a doubt, the One Night Stand shows are, two of the more memorable June pay-per-views that we've had in the history of pro wrestling. So, this is, if you haven't seen this yet, this is something to see in terms of the crowd reaction and the hostility that John Cena had to deal with in the main event. But we're going all the way back to June 11th, 2006, 16 years ago. The Hammerstein Ballroom, only 2,460. A lot of times, though, when you're packing a lot of people into a very small venue, it translates very well on television. And that's exactly what happened here. The pay-per-view buy rate was actually 304,000 buys. I think the ECW One Night Stand shows did very well. They did much better than your normal average WWE pay-per-view. And when you combine the totals for the month of June with One Night Stand and Vengeance, very successful months for the WWE in terms of 2005 and 2006 pay-per-view revenue. But let's get right down to it. The first thing of the night is actually a Paul Heyman promo where he's actually thanking the fans, and he mentions that they're going to debut on the Sci-Fi Network on Tuesday, which ended up being a disaster. At the time, my reaction was like, what? It's like, how is this going to work? But, ultimately, a lot of people were very negative on the WWE version of ECW, but yeah, let's get right down to it. First match tonight, you had Tazz squashing Jerry the King Lawler. So when Jerry comes out, he attacks Joey Styles for Joey walking out on him on Raw a couple weeks earlier, and Joey tries to retaliate. That enables Tazz to lock on the Tazz mission. But this was cool. It was cool to see the King in this environment. I think he almost got killed at an ECW show back in '97. So, a lot of the promoters from the South, whether it be, Jerry Lawler, Jim Cornette, maybe even the Jarretts. Remember Jeff cut that anti-hardcore promo on Raven before Slammiversary. So it definitely does feel like the traditional Southern promoters were very much anti ECW. A lot of the ECW stuff was, originated in the Northeast. So I think that had a lot to do with it. But yeah, it was a cool moment for Tazz. I don't think I've ever seen Tazz look that happy before. He was finally able to get in the ring and just looked like he was having a good time throughout this whole night. And we move on to Kurt Angle taking on Randy Orton. The match is a lot of fun. I always thought it would be cool to see Kurt Angle wrestle in this environment. The previous year he was treated like a heel. He was part of the Crusaders, but for whatever reason, a lot of people just thought it was a natural fit to have Kurt Angle as part of ECW because he was appealing to the the older wrestling fans. He definitely transformed his style. I think a lot of it had to do with the mouthpiece, the wrestling machine. He just wasn't the goofy Kurt Angle anymore. So, I think Paul Heyman wanted him. Paul Heyman always wanted him to be part of ECW because ECW always had, the wrestlers, the Chris Benoits, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Jericho. So, you definitely wanted to have that wrestler as part of the brand. And, Vince McMahon wanted it as well. I think Vince looked at this new brand of ECW as a way to kind of put all the guys that would appeal to the alternative fans. Meanwhile, he could go back to what he always wanted to do, was to have Cena, guys like Cena and Mysterio as the merchandise sellers for each brand. But yeah, Kurt Angle and Randy Orton. Angle and Orton. I really think this could have been the WrestleMania 22 main event. I wish it had been a one-on-one between these two guys. I think this is a really interesting combination. It's funny. I mean, I would have never guessed it, but Angle and Orton are actually pretty good friends. Like, they used to drive together to the shows. I mean, I would have never guessed that, but it is true, though. They actually did a whole podcast together just talking about, their friendship. But so after WrestleMania, Randy Orton actually gets suspended. I can't remember the reason why. Angle actually breaks his ankle in a King of the Ring qualifying match. So yeah, Randy Orton returns and attacks Angle after he was drafted to ECW. Cut some anti-ECW promos on the fans and how they love hardcore porn because it's the closest thing they'll ever come to having sex. So I do remember Orton shitting on the ECW fans, but yeah. This had a really cool atmosphere. They basically treated Angle like Samoa Joe here. They were actually chanting, "Angle's gonna kill you." They were chanting, "You can't wrestle," to Randy Orton, which some of these chants haven't really aged that well. Part of the crowd was actually chanting "Pussy" to Orton when he was running away from Angle. And then Joey Styles goes like, "I guess we have a lot of gynecologists in the audience tonight." I thought so. That was pretty funny. So one part of the match, Angle is actually mocking Orton, so he actually lets him put a headlock on just to kind of prove that he couldn't, match up with him. And then Angle actually suplexes him after the headlock. So they did a lot of really cool stuff here. I thought they wrestled hard. Angle actually makes Randy Orton tap out with the ankle lock, but Orton would actually get a win in a couple weeks at Vengeance. So yeah, I thought the Angle and Orton stuff had a lot of potential. I'm a little bit regretful that they were kind of treated like opening matches like this. They just, I thought they could have been much better promoted. Maybe should have gotten more of a higher profile spotlight than this. So that's my only gripe with it. But very quickly, I'll be here all day if we go into depth about what was going on with Kurt Angle. But obviously, Kurt Angle getting drafted to ECW didn't work out quite well. It did look cool, seeing Angle with the ECW mouthpiece and the wrestling machine gimmick. I definitely get why they did it, or why they had Angle as part of this brand. I thought it did have potential, especially when you consider, Angle, RVD, CM Punk, and a lot of the other ECW originals. But at the same time, Angle felt like he just didn't have a lot to work with other than RVD at that time. And Vince actually told him that he was going to be making less money and wrestling less. So Angle said, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to be making less money? And then Vince was like, well, we'll take care of you on the pay-per-views. So as long as you get on the pay-per-views, I'll take care of you with the bonuses. But the problem was Angle kept getting suspended because of the wellness policy. And, he just didn't make it. He didn't make it to the summer. He wasn't booked at SummerSlam. And I believe the nail in the coffin was he had a house show match with Rob Van Dam. And his groin was like all black and blue. Very similar probably to the way Cody looked. Instead of it being on the pectoral region, it was by his balls, by his groin area. So Angle actually pulled his pants down, showed Vince, and, they came to an agreement that he would let Angle out of the contract. And, Vince was under the impression that Angle would come back in 6 months and they, do the same exact deal, but Angle ended up in TNA. And I think at the time it was a good fit, Jeff Jarrett told Dixie, the one guy that he wanted was Kurt Angle, which is ironic considering how that played out with the Karen Angle stuff and all that. But at that time, like, you just wanted to see Angle, have that playground of wrestlers you never seen him wrestle against, like a Samoa Joe, like a AJ Styles, obviously. But yeah. It just wasn't to me. Both times, Angle and Benoit have a lot in common. And it's just kind of funny when Angle went to ECW, basically it was probably the main reason why he ended up leaving. I'm going to say the money issue had more to do with the suspensions and the medications and the injuries. And when Benoit went to ECW, it didn't turn out so well. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to blame the whole Benoit tragedy on him going to ECW, but you never know. Maybe some of the initial arguments that he had with Nancy were over, when most couples fight, it's usually over money. So you never know. So yeah, but bottom line was, I thought Angle and Orton, it was awesome stuff. And to see Angle in that ECW environment was really cool, without a doubt. All right, next up, you had the FBI of Little Guido and Tony Mamaluke taking on Super Crazy and Tajiri. I thought this was good booking. They had that three-way dance. When you go back to ECW on the national network, and they even had the three-way dance, I think the year prior to this. So it was cool to spice this up and make it a little bit different. So you have the full-blooded Italians out there as a tag team. I'll tell you, Tajiri is awesome, man. Tajiri and Super Crazy just did some really, really cool stuff. And yeah, I mean, pretty well executed. The FBI actually get the victory here. They hit a double Fisherman's Buster, I believe, to put Super Crazy away. And that, the reason they had the heels go over here is so Big Show could come out. Big Show actually turned want to say turn babyface, but they had this battle royal where it was like Raw, SmackDown, and ECW, and Big Show takes off the Raw T-shirt, and underneath it's ECW. So Big Show is actually a babyface in ECW. And it came off pretty good. They didn't shit on the Big Show here the way they did later on that summer when he faced Batista, and that was the whole, change the channel match. They were chanting, change the channel. Big Show actually did some really cool moves here. It almost feels like he knew he had to alter his moveset just to ingratiate the fans. So that's how it came off there. But yeah, I thought that tag match was really good. That's probably going to go down as the most underrated thing on this show. I forgot that they booked that on the show, but yeah, good stuff there. All right, next up we got Rey Mysterio versus Sabu. This is an Extreme Rules match for the World Heavyweight Championship. Yeah, so Rey Mysterio is still champion on SmackDown. This was cool. This is kind of like a dream match. I don't think this ever happened in the original ECW. From what I remember, Mysterio, only took on guys like Psychosis, maybe Juventud Guerrera. But yes, Mysterio and Sabu. This is a dream match for like high flyers. I mean, they did some beautiful stuff here. Sabu was good. Sabu proved in TNA in late 2005 that he still had it. I think at the time, WWE offered him a little bit more money than TNA, so he decided to come over and join RVD and Paul Heyman with ECW. And Sabu had a good summer, I thought. I thought a lot of his work was really well executed. He still looked pretty healthy, like he didn't look that damaged. And yeah, him and Mysterio did some sweet stuff. A lot of awesome stuff off chairs here. Mysterio actually does a springboard standing senton into the table. And then obviously the ending here is what most people remember here. But I thought the match was going along really, really sweet. The ending is awesome, but it sucks at the same time. So kind of a funny story about the pay-per-view parties here. So at the time, this is during the 2006 NBA Finals. So I remember at this particular time, I was having problems with my my cable with the quality. There must have been like a bad wire in the cable system. So during the finals, like you constantly get like that messiness and the freezing. And especially on this show here, like for whatever reason, the show is a little bit crappy in terms of the video quality, the picture quality. So when Sabu does the springboard DDT to Mysterio, right before he hits the DDT in midair, the screen freezes, and everyone's like, "Oh!" Like you knew something awesome was coming here, and then the freeze just, I don't know, man. It just sucked at the time. I wish I called my cable company and got it fixed before the show, but it didn't really take away from the show too much. And I had people at the party here that never watched wrestling before. Like this one guy was like a computer scientist, and he didn't even like wrestling, but he was surprised at how fun he thought the show was. But that's kind of like an inside joke between me and my brother. Anytime we're watching sports or anything on TV and we see a freeze, he points up to the sky like Sabu, and he goes like Sab fucking boo, because he always remembers how the screen froze right before Sabu hit the DDT. But yeah, Sabu hits the DDT, springboard DDT in midair through a table, and they're both like knocked out. And all of a sudden, this guy, he looks like he's the guy from Monopoly. I don't know who the fuck that guy was. Maybe he's like a trainer backstage. He just looks at both guys and he's like, "No, they can't wrestle anymore. The match is over." This had to be one of the most fucked up endings I've ever seen. But hey, while it lasted, though, I thought Mysterio and Sabu was sweet as hell. It was a nice little exhibition of a dream match right there. And yeah, really, really good stuff. I would have gave it 4 stars if it had a finish, but I think 3.5 is a fair rating. All right, next up we move on to the most risque match in WWE history. If you want sex and violence, this is the match for you. It made a lot of sense. All right, so Edge and Mick Foley, after WrestleMania, they were so proud of the match that Mick Foley came clean and said that Edge was a superstar and that they had the greatest hardcore match in the history of wrestling, not just WrestleMania. So Edge, Mick Foley, and Lita started like a coalition to go up against Terry Funk, Tommy Dreamer, and Beulah McGillicuddy. This was kind of the women were kind of added at the last second, but it made for a really fun match. You know, the women have always gotten hardcore and sexual in ECW, so this definitely made sense. And yeah, I think this is where the Lita stuff, with Lita cheating on Matt Hardy and falling for Edge, this is where it really paid off. You know, they were chanting, "I fucked Lita," the prior year at ECW One Night Stand. So this year you get to see Edge and Lita team up. It felt too good to be true. And yeah, Foley really needed to turn heel because it seemed like the fan base was really changing. And I think Vince even told the dirt sheets that Foley wasn't connecting with the audience anymore. So yeah, Foley turning heel really paid dividends. So he started crapping on guys like Terry Funk and Tommy Dreamer for, legends of ECW, hardcore legends, but, they haven't done what I've done, where I became a hardcore legend within the parameters of the WWE. So you finally got to see Foley actually bragging about it. Foley actually calls himself the biggest star in wrestling history, believe it or not. And when he comes out, he's like, yeah, I know I've said some bad things about ECW, but I respected ECW. There was a time when ECW had a true genius and a visionary, when it was run by Stephanie McMahon. And he's like, long live the Alliance, long live the Alliance. So yeah, a lot of people hated the fact that Stephanie was the owner of ECW at one time. But that was just, yeah, I mean, you can't take it too seriously, but you see the multi dimensions of Foley coming out again. So I think the heel turn was really what he needed here. And yeah, the match was a lot of fun. This was definitely, this is the first time you heard "This is awesome" chants at least in the parameters of the WWE. It had already been going on in TNA and Ring of Honor, but this is the first time I ever heard it. And yeah, the match was awesome, man. It was just a lot of fun. Very brutal, very violent. You're seeing Terry Funk, a guy north of 60 years old, being knocked off a ladder. There was one part of the match where Terry Funk had so much barbed wire cutting him open that he actually had to go to the back and put a bandage on, or what do you call that? Like a just to wrap him up so he could get through the match. So when Terry Funk did come back, it was like a hero returning to save the day. So the booking of Funk was exceptional throughout this whole thing. I'll tell you what, man, Foley delivered. Yeah, Foley took some of the biggest bumps in this match. There was actually a flaming 2x4 in barbed wire, and Foley is actually burning. You can see the fire coming off of his flannel shirt, and he takes a bump through a table full of barbed wire. Then they had the fire extinguishers put him out. So yeah, that was really cool stuff. So I did want to talk about Edge here. So when Edge first started out in wrestling, his name was Sexton Hardcastle. And obviously, throughout the years, you learn that, Edge has been divorced a couple times, and, the Lita Matt Hardy stuff, Lita, ended up cheating with Edge and, leaving Matt Hardy. So, they just did a lot of like sexual stuff here, and it just really fit this new character of Edge, where he's promoting himself as the rated R superstar, sex and violence. I mean, the ending here is beautiful too. Like, you really didn't have Lita and Beulah throughout the match do that much stuff together. But you didn't really see Beulah mix it up with the guys much here. But Edge actually spears Beulah, and as the referee's counting 3, for every pin he basically puts himself in position to start humping Beulah, and for every pin he actually gives her a hump. So yeah, it was cool. A lot of it depends on the match. Like a lot of times, like if it's a serious one-on-one match, I don't want to see any sexual stuff interfere in the match. But for this environment, and because what ECW used to do with all the sexuality with the women, and I think they were the first ones to really push lesbians actually kissing in the ring. It just it was cool. It was really something to see, and the match was brutal too, man. And once again, Tommy Dreamer was great here. Some of the stuff that Edge and Dreamer did with the barbed wire was crazy. The Dreamer was actually choking Edge out with the barbed wire. Edge actually did a counter to it, and actually takes the barbed wire around Dreamer's throat and gives him the execution. That could have been a disaster right there. But yeah, the match was a lot of fun. Most people will probably agree that this was probably the best thing of the night in terms of the ratings. But yeah, I can't say enough about it, man. It really did deliver. All right, you also had a lot of like non-wrestling stuff throughout this night. You had JBL actually come out and deliver another anti-ECW promo. Not as memorable as the stuff he did with Orlando Jordan, where they're bouncing the checks at 2005. But yeah, JBL was definitely a great heel for that environment, without a doubt. You also had Eugene come out and say, my Uncle Eric used to tell me I'm as smart as an ECW fan, and that leads to the Sandman coming out and kicking Eugene's ass, because Eugene was just a character that a lot of the older demographic hated. I know The Rock was very happy that Nick Densmore got a break in the WWE, but the gimmick was just, as bad as it gets, in my opinion. For as good of a job that he did with that gimmick, it was just a gimmick that I think, probably hurt the business more than anything. And we also got Balls Mahoney taking on Masato Tanaka. Yeah, I mean, I think you could have used Tanaka a little bit better here than having him in a match with Balls. I mean, the fans are going crazy for Balls Mahoney. What made Balls Mahoney stand out was he looked like a wrestling fan. I mean, one of the guys at my pay-per-view parties, he actually looked like Balls Mahoney. But I mean, he was really over. Every time he punched, like, the fans would chant Balls. There was some unprotected chair shots to Tanaka here. I mean, it was crazy for the amount of time that it got. Okay, and here we go, the main event. We got John Cena defending the WWE Championship against Rob Van Dam. Definitely my favorite Money in the Bank cash-in. It's not a cheap cash-in. It's RVD cashing in for the environment that he's best suited for. He decides to cash it in at ECW One Night Stand. The video package was great here too. Van Dam even touched on how they're gonna boo you out of the arena, as all the ECW fans are gonna be behind RVD here. Okay, so the bottom line is, yeah, the RVD gets a great reaction, but it almost pales in comparison to the type of heat that Cena got here. I mean, Cena was so hated that it's almost like RVD, missing One Night Stand 2005, going for the championship here. It's finally going to come true. Van Dam finally winning the WWE Championship. It's almost like RVD's goal is almost overshadowed by the heat that Cena got. And I mean, some people have said it's lucky, Cena's lucky that he made it out alive. I don't know if I go that far. I mean, would I say this is the most... Definitely in terms of crowd reaction, it's the most hostile crowd, I think, in wrestling history. But, after watching that Collision in Korea documentary from Dark Side of the Ring, I would actually say that's probably more of a nerve-wracking environment to be in than this. Because let's be honest, I think I'm not saying everybody in the crowd was out of shape or anything like that, but if you take a random 10 people and have them gang up on Cena, I seriously doubt, any 10 people in this crowd will be able to beat up on Cena in a real fight in this situation. So no, I don't think Cena had to fear for his life. I think that the security was fairly good here. Cena actually goes out into the crowd with Van Dam in the middle of the match. So yeah, you got to give Cena credit. You definitely had balls. I mean, the fans definitely, gave it to him here. As he's throwing his hat and his T-shirt into the crowd, the fans actually throw it back. So that was pretty funny. That was, that actually started at baseball games. Like a lot of times you go to a Yankee game, someone hits a home run, they'll chant, throw it back. So the fans would actually throw the shirts back into the ring. And there was one guy, I think, someone at the pay-per-view party who goes like, oh man, even the security guys want a piece of Cena. I don't think he was security. I think he was press. He actually had like a press pass around his neck. He's actually, it's black guy in the front row. It looked like Freddie Fox, but you could just tell you could tell like even like a lot of the press was just really fed up with what was going on within the industry, because I think a lot of people just have to realize like things were really, now that the invasion was over and things are getting back to normal. I think Vince wanted to go back to, what used to work back in the day, with Hogan and, we kind of put all the money into a merchandise seller and have him be the face of the company. So I think Vince going back to that model, I think it pissed a lot of people off. I don't think it was so much, Cena the person. I just feel like it's a lot of people's gripes were more with, just the way Cena was being presented as the face of the company. But at the same time, I do not think this was prime Cena. You could just tell Cena still wasn't that coordinated yet. He wasn't moving as well as he did. But I think Cena has a lot to be proud of with his performance here. He was able to control the match. This is one of the last times he was able to actually play a heel in the actual match. He actually attacks the referee, and just the amount of time that Cena spent, being in control here, it's something that we've rarely seen since then. To be quite honest with you, it's almost like RVD didn't really get that much of a chance to really, this wasn't like RVD versus Jerry Lynn where he has a partner where he can play off of, where they could do athletic spots and, you see all these beautiful sequences. It wasn't like that at all. But, probably the most entertaining part of the match is just the back and forth with the punches. Every time Cena throws a punch, it's just, these are like the most well-defined, like, boos. And then when RVD strikes back with the forearms, the boos and yas, these are the most loud, the most, they just resonated, as well as I've ever heard a crowd react to just two guys going at each other. So, yeah, I mean, there's actually, Cena attacks a ref. There's a couple of ref bumps. Edge actually comes out of nowhere with a helmet covering up his whole face, so you couldn't see who it was, and he actually spears Cena through a table that's set up right by the turnbuckle. So Rhino actually did that same gore at WrestleMania 17, and later on that year he had to get neck surgery. So I'm assuming that part of the reason why Edge wore the helmet was to protect his neck, and I think it paid off. So when Edge takes off the helmet, he gets a "Thank you, Edge" chant. They're actually chanting "Thank you, Edge, thank you, Edge." So Edge was great. He actually came off. It was almost like Jesus Christ, our Savior. It's almost like Edge was trying to emulate someone from a movie, just by his facial reaction there. So yeah, RVD takes advantage, hits the frog splash on Cena, and wins the belt. I gotta say this. From when you factor everything, the actual match, Cena's work as a heel, Van Dam being as over as anybody, the ending, the aftermath with RVD celebrating with his wife. Kurt Angle's actually the first one to congratulate him. I thought that was funny. Angle was always a big fan of RVD and thought he deserved the moment. The problem was a lot of times Angle ended up getting bloody or getting hurt by wrestling Van Dam, but I actually think they are really close, and they're actually pretty good friends, believe it or not. But yeah, what really stood out about the celebration at the end was Paul Heyman. Heyman just looked so happy. Like think about it, for how many other promoters were able to have Vince help them out. You get your own pay-per-view. You got, the greatest wrestler to never be world's champion, Jim Ross used to say, finally get his moment. I mean, let's face it, man. I mean, I'm not going to say, it was worth it for Van Dam to wait 5 years and it made the moment that much better. I'm still a fan of promoting Van Dam as champion during the invasion, having him be the guy heading into WrestleMania 18. So, no, I'm not one of the guys that thinks, the moment paid off here. I still think RVD should have had his moment way, way before this, but it was still cool. It was still cool for RVD to get his moment in the sun here. It was really cool. So in terms of the title situation, so he's WWE champion, and at the same time, they rechristen the ECW championship, and they actually have the first segment of ECW on the DVD here, and a lot of people are chanting, throw it out. Like, I think a lot of people wanted Van Dam just to get rid of the WWE championship, but he goes like this to Paul Heyman. He's like, yeah, this is the ECW championship, and this belt right here, yeah, it spins, but I guess I'll keep this one too. So he actually defended the belt against Edge at Vengeance successfully. And then the whole weed smoking thing happens where he had to vacate the title. I think that was inevitable, though. I think no matter what, Van Dam was going to have to give the belt back to whether it be Edge or Cena in the coming months, because Van Dam was totally off of Raw. So eventually Raw's going to need their championship back. The only question was, were they going to wait until SummerSlam, or would it have been out of Raw, before SummerSlam? That's the only question. It just would have been interesting to see exactly how long you would have had to wait. I don't think they would have done it immediately like they did on Raw right after RVD got busted with weed. But I thought it was funny, though, because when he lost the WWE Championship, he was still ECW champion. So obviously he wasn't going to last forever. He was going to have to drop he was going to have to drop the belt soon. So yeah, then after he got busted for weed, they decided to suspend him. And then they had the big show actually defeat RVD on ECW. That's the fans were throwing trash into the ring. That was actually in Philadelphia, I believe, as well. So yeah, the week sucked. I mean, it definitely had potential. I think the biggest problem with bringing back ECW was that it was going to be on after SmackDown. I didn't like that about it, and I don't like it now. How, I mean, I guess you have no choice now. But Dynamite, they do Dynamite, and then they tape Rampage. So Rampage is actually taped after Dynamite. I just think it's too much. I'm in favor of just having, the wrestling show taped in front of, a live hot crowd. I'm not a fan of having it, trying to follow SmackDown. I just thought that was a recipe for disaster. But it did sound good on paper. I like the idea of having RVD, Angle, and then you bring in CM Punk. It really is an attractive mix to build around that could appeal to alternative wrestling fans. So I really think Vince wanted there to be a third brand where this brand is going to appeal to, the alternative fans, without a doubt. I think that was, and he was going to make Raw and SmackDown a little bit more casual based, more mainstream, appealing to the masses. I think that was the original plan, but in the back of his mind, I think he thought about it and said, all right, we'll let them have this platform, but if they fuck it up, I'm gonna do what I want with it. And I think that's exactly what happened when Van Dam fucked up with the weed, and when Angle wanted his release, it was kind of like, all right, well, what do we do with this brand? And let's just make it WWE brand Volume 3. And I think when Lashley won the belt at ECW, December to Dismember, that was like the final nail in the coffin, and it just wasn't going to work. But yeah, and on top of that, I think along with following SmackDown, the television deal on Sci-Fi, originally it felt like they were really trying to appeal to Trekkies, like Star Trek nerds and science, like sci-fi nerds. Like you definitely had a lot of those gimmicks there. But I don't know. I thought it did have potential. I just really wish they let Paul Heyman have full control of it. And yeah, I think that's the only thing I would change. If Heyman had, total control, and if it was, the taping was away from the WWE, I think it would have been, I think it could have worked. I definitely think it could have. But, at that time, though, it's almost like we got to be thankful that they didn't raid TNA and raid Ring of Honor of all their talent and just kind of made it a third brand. I think the fact that they actually thought like all these ECW originals were going to behave and carry the brand was probably a blessing in disguise for some of the smaller companies like Ring of Honor and TNA at that particular time. But yeah, I've said enough. So bottom line is no matter how you feel about the aftermath of ECW, which I think everyone could agree it sucked. That doesn't take away from the fact that this show was a lot of fun, and we've never really seen anything like it in terms of atmosphere and crowd reaction. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you haven't seen it yet, definitely check it out. It's definitely something to see. I think without a doubt, yeah, it was RVD. RVD never really. I'll say this about it. I don't know if anyone's ever accomplished this before. An outsider from another company, coming into WWE and, not really changing his style all that much, becoming champion and having enough power and confidence to bring back the promotion that failed back into the spotlight like this. Van Damme's got to be proud, because I don't think Vince has ever done that for any other wrestlers. So you credit RVD for that, and then at the same time you credit Cena, for getting through this, man. You just credit Cena for not letting all this negativity, not letting all this drama affect him, because obviously everybody has some degree of sensitivity, but for this not to really affect Cena all that much to where the public can really see it, it's very admirable. So I'll leave it at that.